Okay, we're recording on Zoom. I don't know if this is working. Why are you freezing? So anyone on Facebook, is this working? Oh. It's frozen on my end. All right, world. I'm going to assume technology's on my side. Funny things are happening. I've tested this a number of times, and I don't know what's happening. So we're just going to flow with it. My name is Sky Denton, and welcome to my living room. For those of you watching this on a video format, either on YouTube or Facebook, welcome to my place. You can check it out. For those of you listening to an audio on a podcast, I'm happy you're here. This is the first episode of a podcast I've created called Ankylosing Spondylitis, Reduce Your Pain. And what's really, really fun about this, it's a celebration. It's a place of positivity for people with AS. And all over the world, in all of my searching, I have not found a lot of positive things for the 2.7 million people in the United States alone with that disease, and extrapolated that out into the world. I mean, 10 million or more. So what's cool is this is one of the most positive places for people with AS that I know of, and it's an honor to be here, and I'm happy. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I am not giving medical advice. I am not replacing the need for you to go and see a doctor and follow their protocol at all. Not treating your disease, just teaching from my experience and what I've learned. And so tonight, I'm going to teach you, just kind of walk through my story, why it's significant. And at the end of it, there are 3 take-home lessons that I learned from this experience that are important. When I boil it down, some of the roots of what I learned, and I want you to have those to take home with you. So to start, I grew up in a cool place, being able to be pretty athletic and going from an environment that pushed physical excellence to a pretty high degree, sometimes over the top for sure, what all me and my friends did and got away with in the world of athletics and injuries is pretty amazing. And so to take that into a place of being crippled with disease for a number of years and then back to where I am, it's a win for people with AS, because there are not a ton of stories like this, although there are more and more and more. So it's fun to be here, and it's fun to share them. After college, I moved out to Hawaii, and I transferred all of my athleticism energy into surfing. That was just what I wanted to do more than anything else. And after being there for a period of time, one night, the very first night that my body ever started to turn on me, I woke up in the middle of the night and I had a ton of pain right behind my heart, right here in the mid-back. And it was to the extent of where I could breathe about 30% capacity. Any more lung expansion, and I couldn't do it. It just hurt. And so I remember and like, what is going on? What is happening? And over the first year, that became more or less my normal. And that was a life change overnight, immediately overnight. And from there, my body continued to kind of digress for a number of years. I was living in a small truck at that time, and I started to sleep sitting up. People with AS, I've read a few blogs of people doing this, and I know that it's kind of common in the world of ankylosing spondylitis. People start sleep sitting up, and I was in a little Ford Ranger truck, and the thing was teeny, and I would put my feet up on the dash and just recline the seat a little bit and tip my head basically against the window and call it that. That was where I slept for that period of time. Moving into the second year, one of the more devastating things happened, and I started to lose my playfulness. I love to play. People that know me know that I'm a very playful person. It's one of the characteristics about me that I love. And sometimes I can be too playful and not take things seriously enough. But when I started to lose my ability to play, when I started to lose my ability to go out in the surf with my buddies, that's also when I started to really get sad and isolate myself. So when isolation starts, that can be tricky. And for me, it was a bummer. I was so bummed I couldn't just go play with my friends. And again, this is all undiagnosed. I'm just having this mysterious pain in my body. Moving into the third year, it got worse. It moved from my back, up into my neck, down into my hips, into my knees and ankles and feet as well. And I was an adventure guide at the time. And I was having a ton of fun in Hawaii, pushing people off zip lines and taking people hiking and kayaking and doing some surf lesson kind of things as well. But 3 years into this, I started to not be suitable to physically work. And I remember almost hurting people a couple times on the zip lines. And thankfully, I never did. But if anyone has been in a lot of chronic pain for a period of time, especially, like ankylosing spondylitis hurts so bad. It is such a deep-rooted pain in the body. And anyone that lives in that state for a period of time knows how exhausting it is, not only physically when your immune system is pulling all that energy to fight your body, that's exhausting, but the mental component, the mental drain, the mental fatigue of just dealing with the pain, that really started to get the better of me. And so these zip lines were big. Some of them are 50 foot high off these shaky platforms, pushing people off these 1,200 foot cables. Some of them are 170 feet off the ground in the middle. And then on the other side, we would have brakes, and they'd come in like at 20 miles an hour, and we'd have to brake them. And I almost hurt people. So I started to realize that there was an issue. And what led to the diagnosis is pretty interesting. And those with AS are gonna resonate with this. And that's one reason I'm telling this story. People that know me know that I don't necessarily talk a lot. I can be pretty quiet. But for those of you with this disease, you're gonna be able to resonate and hear yourself in my story. And that's important. So what ultimately led to a diagnosis, again, this is probably 3 years or so into experiencing this pain. I was living in rural Idaho at the time, and I was laying on my left side, and in the mornings, I was really pretty crippled in pain. It was not uncommon for me to not be able to get out of bed on my own. And this morning, I'm laying there, I'm in so much pain, I can't move, and just to get myself mentally geared up, to put myself through the level of pain it was gonna take to just sit from a prone position up to a vertical position was a lot in itself. And so I remember laying there, gathering myself, and ultimately pushed off the bed, came up, and I had so much inflammation in my neck at that time that to tip to side at all, just having the tension from the weight of my head on my neck, it all hurt. And so to go all the way prone was really, really, really painful. So I went for it. I came up. I almost made it. I didn't quite make it. I ended up falling back down. And when I was bracing myself to deal with the pain that I knew was going to ensue when my face hit this pillow and hit the bed, I started to close inward, protect myself, and I twisted a little bit. and I fell face down into the pillow. And there I was. I was in so much pain, I couldn't really move. I knew I wasn't going to lay there and suffocate. I'm not going to be that dramatic. I knew I would get out of the situation. But here I was in a situation where I'm laying down on this pillow and I'm realizing I can't breathe. And I hurt so bad that I'm terrified to move. And this was a really, really significant turning point for me because I realized something wasn't okay. Up until that point, all the injuries that I'd had in the past, all the things, the physical things I had had kind of went away over time. So I had a lot of wishful thinking that it was just old injuries or musculoskeletal imbalances from old sport things. And I realized it wasn't okay. And once I got up, I kind of freaked out. I put on my shoes and I walked out into the woods and I got a big stick. And up until that time, people had never seen me express anger. I've always been pretty reserved and seen as a pretty calm person. Inside was a different story, especially this day. And I walked out into the forest with this stick and I just beat the hell out of trees and stumps and sticks in the snow and just swung this thing around. And it hurt tremendously to do it, but anger took over at that point, and I just got pissed. I actually opened up and moved emotions. that was a healthy thing to do. And then when I was tired, I had just what do they call it? A come to Jesus moment, and I just fell down on my knees and sobbed, and I just cried and cried and cried, and I was so scared. The realization of the significance of the issues with my body finally set in that day after 3 years. And I had been so tight up with emotions and not expressing anything that finally the floodgates opened and I just sobbed. And I'll never forget that. Ultimately, I stand up, I walk back to the house and I called my mom. And I was like 20, 23, 24. And I told my mom, something is not okay. And this was the first of its kind. My good friends, even my very best friends, didn't know where I had been the last couple of years. I disappeared. They were out doing amazing things, pushing excellence in sports and extreme sports. And I could hardly get out of bed at times. And I was embarrassed and sad and lonely. And I didn't want them to know what was going on. So my best friends, I hadn't even talked to them. I just disappeared off the map. So for me to call my mom and say, hey, something's not okay, was a big deal. And it ultimately led to a diagnosis of ankylosing spondylitis. I was also diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis. I had psoriasis on all my fingers. All my knuckles and fingers would crack and bleed, especially when I closed my hands. I had psoriasis on my eyes, on my face, on the top of my head. And it was scary. I had weird autoimmune things, allergy things going on. And my body was doing all kinds of funky, weird things. So once the diagnosis set in, it was really, really scary. I found so much information online that is so devastating for people with ankylosing spondylitis. It's one reason I'm building this podcast is because what I found out there was so scary and so negative that if I can be of any hope to anyone else, that's the foundation of what we're doing here. That's why I'm here. And so I found the best doctors on the East Coast and the West Coast. And I ended up flying to the University of California in San Francisco and saw Dr. Leanne Gensler, who's a fantastic doctor, and met with her, got more MRIs, got blood tests, got tested positive for HLA-B27. For those of you with AS, you're probably familiar with that disease, Crohn's disease also. There are significant markers in the body, and that one, if you have that gene, that can be the nail in the coffin for your diagnosis. And so I tested positive demographically with my blood tests, with the sedimentary rates in my body, and all the symptomology for 3.5 years at that point. It fit like a glove. So from there, I tried all kinds of crazy mental diets. I tried all kinds of anything I could think of, anything I could think of. And the woman I was dating at the time, her name is Lonnie, and she was so fantastic because together we were strong advocates for my health, and we would research. We would get online and find all these people, naturopathic doctors, holistic practitioners, like so many different modalities, and we would test them out and we would learn together, and we would spot check all these different things and see what felt right. And we were a strong advocate for better health. And despite all these different people telling me all these different things, nothing really made sense. And I did something one day that I got from Jim Carrey, the famous actor, right? The Dumb and Dumber actor that I grew up with, that a lot of us millennials know and love. I saw something with him on YouTube, and he talked about writing himself a check. I think it was for like 1 million or 10 million. I think it was $10 million. He wrote himself a check, and he dated it a couple years out. He put it in his wallet, and he kept it on his body. And so from that, I decided to write myself a letter of healing. It was a congratulatory letter of massively reducing my symptoms. And it was terrifying. To write a letter and to not really put much heart in it and dismiss it, no pain, no gain, nothing like that. But I really dedicated myself to this. And I really want to give Lonnie a shout out too. And this is a side conversation for people that know others with ankylosing spondylitis or are caretaking for people with AS. We could design a whole podcast series on the very specific way of caretaking for someone in that situation without perpetuating or fostering more victimization, because those caretakers in those positions are very, very important. And they're kind of like the first line defense. So Lonnie was amazing in her willingness to advocate and support things like this letter. And so I wrote this letter. I dated it 1 year from the day and said that I was going to reduce my symptoms a lot. Flash forward a little bit. One day I couldn't really walk. Lonnie possibly helped me out of bed that day, and I'm sitting on a couch, and a really, really transformational thing happened. I got online and I got to YouTube, and I did something that day. I typed in ankylosing spondylitis into YouTube, which I'm sure I had done many times before, but that day, one guy popped up. His name was Peter Winslow. It was a top video. I remember looking at it. I was like, I haven't seen this before. And I clicked on it. There's a 3-minute video of him talking about reclaiming his life from AS, of massively reducing his symptoms and moving forward in a way that was healthy and able to live a fantastic life. And I remember hearing his message, and it was very different. Like I said, I'd had all these practitioners tell me all these different things for so long. And Peter's message was very different. He was the first guy I met that was like, hey, you can do something about this. You might not have to live in pain for the rest of your life. And for me, that changed my life. That little bit of hope, like what I felt in my body, the reason I had written that letter was because of hope. And I found it, this little lighthouse in this sea of very scary information online that I had found. And here was this guy. And I remember being very fragile at that moment. And I remember him saying, it resonated with me. And the YouTube comments below, I really wondered if I was going to read them, if I could handle it. I found a little bit of hope. Could I handle people saying that it didn't work for them, or whatever else? And curiosity got the best of me. And I looked at the YouTube comments, and people didn't quite understand what he was saying. But I did. I got it. Something in his message just resonated so deeply with me. And so from there, I followed his websites. I tracked him online, and I bought his book. This book is called Heal for Real, and it's how he reclaimed his life from disease. It talks about science. It was everything I needed at the time. The pain didn't go away after reading the book, but I had hope, and I had some science, and I had a contact point. And from there, I can flip this open. I just flipped this open earlier, and this page, literally almost every single thing is highlighted on this page in this book. So for me, it really was the first piece of hope that I found, and a person that I resonated with. One thing too, Peter was strong and got into bodybuilding after his experience with AS. And when I was very crippled and small and pale and frail and feeling very broken and not confident and terrified, here was this strong, handsome man telling me that I could make changes in my life. And it just like, he was everything I wanted to be that I felt like I wasn't. And so I started coaching with him twice a week for 60 minutes. I think it was Mondays and Thursdays. And he would blow my mind. I would get on these calls not knowing what to expect. And I didn't know what AS coaching was. Peter was the first person that I know of anywhere to be an ankylosing spondylitis success coach, an AS symptom reduction coach. And he was my guy. I'd get on these calls and my time with him was amazing. Like I said, he'd blow my mind. And I would start realizing how empowered I actually was as a person and how much choice I had in what I did with the symptoms in my body and how I could actually start to align my nervous system, my conscious mind, my subconscious mind, in a way that would relieve stress and relieve pain. And it was brilliant. It was all science-backed. He had done his research. He's worked in clinics, like all kinds of certifications, and he knew his stuff, and it changed my life forever. So I signed on for his program called the Winslow Way. It was the Winslow Way of reducing symptoms from AS, named after his last name. And after 2 months of coaching with him on the phone, I moved. Like I said, he was my guy. And so I got support from family and from friends, and I went and got a little 1-bedroom place by myself, which was a big deal because at times I actually was not able to walk. And so to leave my caretakers, to leave that situation, to say goodbye to Lonnie, to have Lonnie let me go, and then to move thousands of miles away to study with Peter. And this was before he had an online presence like Skype and everything that's happening now. But in that time, I let a lot of symptoms go. And one of the most important things I learned, so I had learned about diets. I'd learned about molecular mimicry and Klebsiella. For those of you with AS, you might know those. I learned about leaky gut. I learned about inflammation in the body and autoimmune responses. And what the final piece of the puzzle for me were 2 components. And Peter brought those in heavy. He brought them in confidently, and he brought them in strong in a system. One was getting the body to work for me and with me, and to also start exercising in a way that built confidence back in my body. Because when I had pain for so long, I was not confident. When every step I knew was going to take, and it would jar my nervous system, it's really hard to move throughout the world in a very confident way. So Peter had me training and building the confidence in my body that really, really, really helped. I busted a lot of stress. It started to change my identity. It started to get me on a path of wellness instead of a path of continued disease. He also brought in a really interesting mental component. Like I said, the diets, the drugs, all of those helped. The final piece of the puzzle was understanding that the psychology and literally the brain of someone who's had AS for a number of years and the brain of someone who is healthy and doesn't have to worry about the pain and deal with the pain, they look different. So with Peter's help, I began to learn new things that allowed my body and my brain to function like a healthy person's. And I learned the science along the way. I learned about neuroplasticity. I learned about epigenetics. I learned about how plastic the brain and the body are and how they're constantly listening to us. And I learned how to communicate with my body in a way that no one else I had found understood, for one, or could teach me. So that's where Peter coming into the picture set me on a path to rapid change very, very quickly. Humor started to come back. I got playful again. And I used humor to bust more stress. And all the while I'm doing research, Peter's teaching me about how the conscious and subconscious mind are working together. And it wasn't Peter, but someone told me one time that if the conscious mind is like New York City, the subconscious mind is like the rest of the world. It is so brilliant. There's so much going on in there. and our conscious and subconscious minds, part of the central nervous system, they immediately affect the body's immune system. And so I'm learning the science all along the way, and then the practical application of the Winslow way. And I've continued to study this now for years. And it points us as a human species in the direction of so much empowerment and growth when it comes to reducing symptoms from AS, to reclaiming our lives from pain. And it shows us like how freaking powerful we are when we know what we're doing. Like when we know what we're doing, that's one of the most important things. So I continued on the path. I left my time with Peter. I was still on some medications, but I put on 25 pounds of lean muscle. I literally rose out of severe AS, having put on 25 pounds of muscle, feeling strong, feeling confident, having reduced my medication, and on a very different path in life. So I stayed the course. It took some time. Other people at this point have done it way faster than me. But for me, I learned all these things, and so much of the pain fell away. Peter hasn't had any relapses in 30 plus years. I've had a couple small ones where some pain came back, and it didn't last for long. I mean, and it was nothing like it used to be at all. So since then, the ripple effect has been huge. It's inspired and instigated other coaching platforms, and other people are doing the same thing I've done. There's now a global network being built of people that are in classes or beginning to coach, and more people are stepping up for private work, for group work. There's one class going right now that has 10 people from all over the world that have AS, and we're halfway through the class, and it's amazing seeing the changes that are happening. And I can listen to everyone speak, and I can hear their language, and neuro-linguistic programming is pretty amazing. It's kind of how words work in our brains, and so I can hear what people are saying and hear the breakthroughs, and I can remember where I am in all of those, and they're all changing. They're all growing. The symptoms are falling away, and they're continuing to improve their lives. And where they go from here, 5 years from now, they'll be completely different people than who they were had they not found an AS coach who embodies what they desire with their end result. So more and more successes are happening, and it's been a ton of fun to be a part of. So that's the story. That's who I am in a nutshell in regards to AS, and why I'm passionate about it, why I put a lot of effort into speaking to people with AS, and why I'm a coach, why I am building this podcast. And that was the tip of the iceberg. As this podcast unfolds, more and more pieces of my story will come out. Like I said, I learned so much in this, and it's just, so tip of the iceberg, more to come. I told you there are a couple take-home messages that I wanted people to get from listening to this tonight. And one of them, people hear me say it a lot, and it's that your body is brilliant. And I absolutely know it's true. Even if you're in tremendous pain, which I certainly know what it's like to be there, your body is brilliant, and it's not broken. It can make quick changes. And I remember really not loving my body at all. I was so angry. I was so jealous that other people could go and party and drink alcohol and dance and like abuse their bodies, but they were still healthy. They could still get out of bed and go to work. And here I was trying everything I could to be healthy, only eating organic, doing the low starch diet, the no starch diet, all these things that a lot of people with AS do. And I wasn't healthy. And so I didn't believe that my body was brilliant. Now, having studied this stuff for years, seen people's bodies come back into a place of where they feel good, I get it. And one simple example is if you break your arm, you'll get a cast put on. You'll get MRIs. You'll talk to doctors. They will give you a protocol. They'll give you a cast that keeps you safe. You follow their protocol, and that sets you up for success. And then also at the same time, the cast doesn't do the healing. The body does. So there's an inherent intelligence in our bodies that is healing us all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. So one take-home message for you: without being too long-winded, is that your body is brilliant. Know it, love it, respect it, and communicate with it. Number two, everyone is so different. We all have our own unique area of genius. We all have our own areas of trauma, of pain, of love. And with a coaching practice for a number of years now, where I talk to a lot of very different people, most of them actually not being in the US, I see these vast differences in cultures. At the same time, our bodies, as different as we all are, our bodies work very, very similar. So for example, stress increases the heart rate. Okay, stress affects the health. Okay, simple, simple, simple. But understanding that, I've never seen the tools that Peter taught me, that I have taught to others, that when applied in the appropriate way, didn't work to some degree. I've never seen them not help, because our bodies do work the same way, no matter where we are in the world. So what's fun about that is it connects us all into a strategy, into an application, into a modality of health that works universally. And that excites me so much. So as different as we are, we're also the same on some really, really deep ways. Okay, and the last take-home message for you is that feeling, one of the first steps to reducing symptoms, to triggering the nervous system responses, both consciously, subconsciously, and then in the body, that allow for a reduction in pain, in my experience, has come from finally feeling that someone is connected to a supportive community, feeling that they have support. That was what Peter was for me when I found that YouTube video. A little bit of hope right there. My mindset switched. My immune system was enhanced in that moment instantaneously. I felt gratitude. And what those do in the body, they're positive. So it enhances our immune systems at the same time. So when we feel connected, we feel strong, we feel supportive. And this goes back to evolutionary psychology. When we were in small hunter-gatherer tribes, if you weren't part of the community, if you were ousted, your survival was not guaranteed and not likely. And so being in that situation was stressful, to say the least. So the isolation piece, the being surrounded with negativity piece that a lot of us with ankylosing spondylitis have gone through, it lots of times doesn't actually enhance the immune system and reduce pain. What flips the switch is feeling that you're part of a supportive community. That's why I'm here. That's what this whole thing is about, is to start to bring more and more people into feeling good. If I have one message for you, it's that I'm telling you that it's possible to feel good again. Okay, and it starts with feeling connected to a supportive community. It goes deep into our psychology, deeper than I can fully explain. So we're almost done. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of story. Those take-home messages are important. They are very important. They might seem simple, but that does not mean that they're not significant. So for those of you that watch this on any platform, whether it's the live stream or an audio recording or a podcast, I ask you to share it. If you have AS, this is for you. If you know someone with AS, this is also possibly for you, and it's definitely for them. And like I said, this is probably the most positive place that I know of for people with ankylosing spondylitis. This podcast is going to be fun. It's going to be empowering. It's going to get people out of victimization. And that is one of the most beneficial things that I know of to help reduce symptoms. So share it. I would really appreciate it. And contact me in any way. SkyDenton.com is probably the easiest. Peter Winslow, AS Victors Club, has a ton of free resources. ASVictorsClub.com. Definitely check that one out. You can learn about Peter, and there are some resources there that can really help out. We care. I care about people with AS. I understand that disease. It's an area of expertise for me. The psychology of chronic pain, the psychology of what it takes to get into a situation that's not healthy and start to work my way out of it is something that is an area of genius for me. I love it. I'm fascinated by it. I think about it all the time. And so contact me. I'm very approachable. I'm very friendly. And I'm doing this because I care. Like, subscribe, follow, share, do all the things, whatever they are. And in closing, for those of you with AS, or possibly psoriatic arthritis, which, like I said, I also was diagnosed with. I also had irritable bowel syndrome for a number of years. And so for people with those issues, I congratulate you, because I know how hard it is to live a life with a smile on your face when you hurt inside every single day. I've been there, and I don't know if you hear a lot of people congratulate you. I think that I know with me, a lot of people felt sorry for me. So I was actually being victimized even more than was necessary. I'm going to flip that. I'm going to congratulate you, because you're doing amazing. To do what you do every day is something that requires so much internal strength that it can be incomprehensible, and other people don't see it. It's one thing about these invisible diseases. Other people don't know. They don't know. They can't see it. So you're living with this pain, and it takes the strength to do that. And in final closing, this sounds kind of crazy, but if there was a good time to have AS, I believe it's now. Because now we know that there's a lot that we can do about it. 50 years ago, 100 years ago, people didn't have the medications, for one, and then there wasn't the science into like what I learned of the psychology of chronic pain and the switches we can make in our bodies and in our nervous system. So there's so much science. There are so many people changing, and there are, like I said, I've seen it all over the world. I've seen people that were totally victimized and crippled. Now they're doing like multiple mile obstacle courses and feeling fantastic. So if there was a good time to have AS, I do believe the time is now. Thank you for listening, everyone. I'm grateful. I'm honored to be here. It's a fantastic opportunity to be in, to see people change, to know what I know, to have had the experience I had, and to be able to be here in front of you all without a lot of pain, and with a network behind my back that supports you all, supports me. I feel that I'm part of a supportive community. From here, we can just continue moving forward, and people can really, really begin to live in less pain. So my name is Sky Denton. I encourage you to contact me. And one thing is that, you know this, it's scary, but if you have AS, it's very likely that if you don't do something about it, it's going to get worse. It's not what you want to hear, I know, but now you know that you can do something about it. Okay, now you know that there are people like me that are success stories, that care, that know things, and now you know that there are a lot of things that you can do. So my name is Sky Denton. Thank you for listening. I'm going to close down all these apps and windows, so it's going to take a second. Any questions, let me know, and I wish you all the best. Good night. Okay, what am I doing here? How do I end all